Tractate Eiruvin, page 101, the top of the page. הדלת שבמוקצה והחדקים שבפרצה ומחצלות אין נועלים בהן, אלא אם כן גבוהים מן הארץ. Persons have a house, and some of us who have in the backyard a door that's rarely used or used for certain temporary needs. So here we speaking about the rare door that it's in that hallway and it's not attached to the back entrance. So he said the whole idea of something that's set aside, you use it only for temporary need. You don't use it all the time. Now, in those days, they used to pull out the door and put it aside, and then the way they walk out. That's the way Rashi said it here. Mm-hmm. But there are those who have some type of ditch or some type of connector. How do you call that connector?
You mean like hinges?
Hinges.
Yep.
So they have some portable hinges. You see it, for example, in a shul, you see it in one of the closets. They have a folding doors that have hinges. Mm-hmm. So it can be moved to a different way. So they said here, the key point is that they have to have space between the bottom of the door and the ground. So they said, if you have those situation, or you have bundles on the throne that seal a breach, and reed mats, so you cannot close and open them on Shabbat unless they remain above the ground. So if you remember, we said many times that this is a prohibition, as the Ritva tells us and many others, it's rabbinic prohibition. And Rashi hold that it's really attached, kshurot, they somehow connected. Others say that only if they are uplifted from the ground hanging. While you, yes, a hanger that when you're moving them. So yes, you may ask, soon you see the issue of lavud that we discussed many times with the 3 tfachim, but we're not there yet. So now the Gemara asks, וראמינו, דלת הנגררת ומחצלת הנגררת וקנקן הנגרר בזמן שקשורים ותלויים נועלים בהם בשבת, ואין צריך לומר ביום טוב. So in general, the Yom Tov, the festival, we are much lenient in festival versus Shabbat. If someone did some violation on a festival, so he violated law, but we call it lav. Versus if he does that on Shabbat, that we said b'meizid, it's the mitah and b'shogeg is chatat. Versus in Yom Tov, if a person did it in mezid, so they said he get the malkot, etc. So it's a huge difference as far as the regulation and punishment in Yom Tov. So with that in mind, they said here that if you have a delet, some type of door, here we speak about a door that's not necessarily a back door, or you have a mat, or they use the word here kankan, it's like lattice, that drag along the ground and use as a closing and opening. So they said when they are tied and suspended, so the one may close and opening them on Shabbat. And for sure it's not the issue in festival, because in festival we're much lenient. So now you see here a contradiction to what we said earlier. Because here you see that in order to allow opening that door on Shabbat, so you don't need to have the door totally attached, and you don't need to have the door above the ground. But if you read in the Mishnah, that's the 2 conditions the Mishnah require. So Abaye said, Amar Abaye, B'sheyesh lahem tzir. You have to say that here we speak about hinges, that in the Mishnaic times, the doors were attached by two hinges. So it was one upon the ground from the back and one from the top backward. So that's the way in the Mishnaic time they used to do it. So Rashi tells us that by having hinges that show that is a certain use, and a person should not orient that with a melechet boneh, with building something. So he said, here Abaye speak about those doors that have hinges. Rava Amar b'shehaya lahem tzir. He says he allowed to lock it on Shabbat also when those doors have hinges. Even now they don't have, because they have it in the past, so it's considering doors. Meitivei. דלת הנגררת ומחצלת הנגררת וקנקן הנגררת is exactly the same as we said earlier. בזמן שקשורים ותלויים וגבוהים מן הארץ, as long as they are connected and tied and suspended and they're above the ground, אפילו מלוא נימה נועלים בהם. Even they are a little as a hairbreadth, one may close an opening with them. ואם לאו, if they don't raise in this manner, אין נועלים בהם, one may not close an opening with them. So it means from this braita that these doors must indeed be raised above the ground as well. So he said, Abaye metaretz letame, Rabbi metaretz letame, each of them, Abaye and Rabbi, each of them has his own direction, they explain it. Abaye metaretz letame, או שיש להם ציר, או שהם גבוהים מן הארץ. Either that they have these hinges, or they're above the ground. רבה מטרס לתעמק כשהיה להם ציר או שגבוהים מן הארץ. רבה explains that here they must have a hinge or else be held above the ground. So that's the way you can lock them even they never have a hinges. תנו רבנן סוחי קוצים וחבילים שהתקינן לפרצה שבחצר. If branches of a throne, bushes or bundles of woods that were arranged so that they sealed off a breach in a courtyard. בזמן שקשורים ותלויים נועלים בהם בשבת וצריך לומר ביום טוב. When they are tied and suspended in place, one may close an opening with them on Shabbat, and needless to say that they are allowed to do it biyom tov, in a festival. So, in general, there is a discussion here if this door applied to a door that it's a muktzeh, that it's set aside, and something that a person lock it constantly or not. It's a long discussion among the Rashba, Ritva, Ravad, and many more. Tani Rabbi Chia, Delet Almana. Almana in Hebrew meaning widow. So here we use it as a connotation point, which means we use it as an example. So if you have a widow door that some part is missing, that needs to be in a door, and it turns anigreret, eino alimba, that one may drag it along the ground, so you not use it as opening. If you think about sometimes storage rooms or back rooms or rare part of the houses, some people use that just to close the entrance, so animals will not get in, etc. They use it for this type of purposes. So he said you cannot lock it on Shabbat, even they have hinges. Tosfot said, because if you don't have the hinges, you cannot lock it even it's not a widow door. So, because this door basically is not looking like a door, and the one who lock it looks like he is boneh, he's like building something. That's the Ritva said. What type of widow door? So one opinion is ikadamre dechad shipa, One opinion said that they have a door built with a single plank, which does not look like a door. So it looks like a reverse. What?
It's just a board.
Just a board.
Piece of wood.
Well, there are some artists that put it together. It looks nice, it's a two pieces together. And there are those who say it does not have a lower door seal, which is that it's that touch the ground when they close. So, or there are some who say that they don't have a threshold. That's the Rif and the Rambam. Now, since we talk about boneh, the melacha of a building, so now we bring several things that is involved with a temporarily some type of tent, because the Torah forbidden us in boneh building if someone builds something as a permanent building. But here, if you have, for example, a tent that is for protection, for sun, for heat, so you don't move it on Shabbat, but otherwise the Shulchan Aruch said that if you don't have a partition around it, it's not an issue. So it means that here our Sugya, our Gemara is speaking about the ohel that doesn't make for protection, it just made for in a way that they have some type of partition to other part. So Amar Rav Yehuda Hai Medurta. If someone created on the Yom Tov a pile of food for a fire on festival, so that's the way they used to do it. It's a part of building process. That they put some walls in 4 different parts, put a wood, and it looks like a tent. So they said, Mimala lemata share, mimata lemala asir. If he brought from the top to the down, which means the upper lungs are temporarily suspended in air, while the lower legs are inserted below them, it's permitted. However, if the wood placed on the bottom up, it's prohibited. V'chen be'ata, and also applies to egg. V'chen kidra, and the same applies to cauldron. So again, the same thing. V'chen puya, and the same applies to bed that will be placed on its frame. And he said v'chen chavita, and the same applies to barrels arranged in a cellar. So all of these cases, the part that goes on the top, it has to be temporarily suspended in the air, while the lower section is inserted beneath it. Now, since we use in the Mishnah the term chedek, so here is a story. Amar lehu mina, or ahu tzedoki. The Rabbi Yoshua ben Hanania, one of those heretics, said to Rabbi Yoshua ben Hanania, chidka'a, you are like chidka, meaning you are men of thorn.
Thorns, right? Yeah, they say thorny one here. Yep.
Dechtiv, it said in the book of Micah, chapter 7, tovam kechedek. The best of them is a briar. So, meaning the top of the righteous people, it's like a throne. Marlei shatya. He said to him, you are full. Shvil Sefer Dikra, did you read the entire line? They said, Ichtiv Yashar Mimsucha, because they said the most upright is worse than a throne badge, which means that the derogatory expression meant as a praise. So he said it means that the straight, honest, righteous people, they have more they are better than the mesucha, so it means that he's praising them. Ve'ela mai tovan kechedek. So what does that mean? That these thrones are protected as a breach. כשם שחדקים עלינו מגינים על הפרסה, כך דברים שבנו מגינים עלינו. The same way as the throne protecting those opening places, so the thieves or bad animals will not enter there. The same applied to our righteous people that protecting everyone else. דבר אחר, another way, טובם כחדק, שמהדקין את הרשעים לגיהינום. So they said that they grind the nation of the world into גיהינום. שנאמר, the said in the Micah, קומי ודור שיבת ציון כקרני חסים ברזל ופוסדי חסים נחושה ועלקות עמים רבים. So they called, the prophet called the nation of Israel to fight against the nations that treat them poorly. And they use the term here. He promised that he is give them the strength with karnei barzel, which is a iron hoof brass. So they fight against those nations. Is for sure it's a metaphor that in that way they give a strength to the nation. Now the next Mishnah, go back to our discussion. While a person can carry an item from one domain while he's staying in a different domain. So I'm going to use now Mitzvah Shem and Morot Adaf, picture number 357. לא יעמוד אדם ברשות היחיד ויפתח ברשות הרבים. So a person should not stand and hold the key. This is the partition, private domain. And Rashi said he's inside that domain. And he carried the key and he opened with that key in a public domain. So what's the idea? The idea is that even that there is a space between the entrance and the place he's standing in a 4 cubits, Rashi said, because if it's a 4 cubits you cannot carry. But the decree is maybe he carried that key to a private domain, and also Birshut Harabim, if it's the other way, if it's a public domain, he carry the key that it's in a Birshut HaYachid, that is in a private domain. And for example, if the key is, Rashi said on the top of the roof, that they have a 10 handbreadth high and 4 wide. So because the same decree that maybe he carry his own key and his place is the public domain. ויפתח ברשות היחיד, and open in the private domain, אלא אם כן עשה מחיצה גבוה 10 טפחים דברי רבי מאיר. Only if he erected the petition 10 handbreadth high, and then you put it that 10 handbreadth high around the door and stands inside it, that's the Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Meir basically disagreed with the previous Mishnah that they allow a person to stand in one domain and carry something in different domain. אמרו לו, the sages said to him, מעשה בשוק של פטמים. It's a story about incidents in poultry dealers. That shuk של פטמים was in Yerushalayim, and he said שהיה בירושלים שהיו נועלים ומניחים את המפתח בחלון של גבי הפתח. That he used to lock the door and the place at the top, the key at the top of over the door, the key, and that window was the private domain that was in a 10 handbreadth high and wide 4. So we see from this story that the person who stands in a public domain can lock in a private domain, unlike the word of Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Yossi אומר שוק של צמרים הווה. Rabbi Yossi said that the place was the market of a wool dealer. So the rabbi tells us, the Rabbeinu Yonatan, before this story, said that the Rabbi Yossi did not disagree. He just want to be very clear where the place is, which indirectly we learn another thing, the idea of being very scrupulous when you're saying something and you make a statement and you describe something. You have to be very careful and scrupulous what you said. So now the Gemara said, Rabbanan. So the sages that they come and prove the word of Rabbi Meir from the story of the market in Jerusalem. What type of fruit you have from there? Amar Rabbi Meir, Reshut Arabim. Rabbi Meir forbade to a person who stand in a public domain and carry the key in a private domain. Umehadru inu Carmelit. And their response from the story of a person who stand in a Carmelit and carry it in a private domain. Because the same story was in Jerusalem, and Jerusalem is treated as a Carmelit. How? The Amar Rabba Babarchan Amar Rabbi Yochanan Yerushalayim, אלמלא דלתותיה ננעלות בלילה חייבים עליה משום ברשות הרבים. Jerusalem, if they don't have lock the doors, so those who carry anything inside the domain, it's considering like it's a public domain. Now you have to remember that the Jerusalem have a wall around the entire city, and people used to enter to those special gates, and those gates were used to lock them at night. So even in Yerushalayim at that time it was many people. The streets were not so important to be called a Reshut Arabim, a public domain, because the Gemara said in Shabbat, page 98, that only the place that children of Israel walk in the wilderness, that's considering as a public domain. But otherwise, if it's not open all the time, like Yerushalayim was used to lock at night, so you don't treat it as a public domain, but only Carmelit. The Ritva said that it's not a Carmelit, because you can carry vessels at the time of the Friday, the Shabbat begins. Even in a Carmelit, this type of carrying is forbidden, but it's only treated as a public yard, public courtyard that didn't put an Eruv there. So that's a rabbinic prohibition against carry there. So אמר רב פאפא, כאן שנפרצו בפרצות, קודם שנפרצו בפרצות, כאן לאחר שנפרצו בפרצות. So those holes, they have this, the breaches were made in its wall, that's apply that Rabbi Yochanan said that they have more than 10 cubits, so that therefore the walls is not considering as a partition, and therefore it's not considering a private domain. And the other speaks about after the breaches have been made in the wall, and therefore it's acquired the status of a public domain. Rava Amar, Seifa Atan L'Sharei Gina. The story that we have here speak about what? About the gate of garden, which is an area that greater than 2 se'ah, and you treat it as a Carmelit. V'hache ke'amar. That's the way you understand the Mishnah. V'chen lo ya'amod adam birshut hayachid. A person should not be in a private domain, and he carry a key, and he open a Carmelit, ve'iftach b'Carmelit. For example, if he's standing in his yard, that's a private domain, he shouldn't put his hand to the yard, to the garden that it's a Carmelit, toward the hole, and they carry a key there in order to open something inside the garden. And he said, "Becarmelit v'iftach b'reshut hayachid." So if he's standing in a garden that is Carmelit, he shouldn't put his hand that is above 10 handbreadth, that is a private domain, and he opened the door in a private domain. 101b, אלא אם כן עשה מחיצה גבוהה 10 טפחים. Unless he built a partition, erected a partition that they have a 10 handbreadth high around the door, and he is inside it. דברי רבי מאיר, that's the word of Rabbi Meir, אמרו לו, they said the same as we mentioned earlier, מעשה בשוק של פטמים שהיה בירושלים. So it's a story about a market, it's an incident of poultry dealers. It was in Yerushalayim. So they said that the street was like a Carmelit, שהיו נועלים ומניחים את המפתח בחלון שעל גבי הפתח. Used to lock and putting the door, the shops in the place, in the key windows that over the door. רבי יוסי אומר שהוא של צמרים הבא. Rabbi Yossi said that that place was a market of wool dealers. Tanu Rabbanan, the sages taught in the Braita. Pitchei sha'arei gina, entrance of the garden gates that open into a public domain. So he said, Bizman sheyesh lahem beit sha'ar mibefnim, when they have a gatehouse on the inside, which is a private domain, poteach venoel mibefnim, one may open and close them from within. Mibachutz, from the outside entrance, poteach venoel mibachutz, he open and close from outside, from without. ומכאן ומכאן פותח ונועל כאן וכאן. And from here and there, you open and close the doors here and there. אין להם לא לכאן ולא לכאן. If they do not have a gatehouse neither here nor there, אסורים כאן וכאן. It is prohibited to open or close the doors here and there. As not may carry the key either in a public domain or in a garden. וכן חנויות הפתוחות לרשות הרבים, and also likewise stores that open into the public domain, בזמן שהמנעול למטה מ10, when the lock is below the 10 handbreadth of the ground, מביא מפתח מערב שבת ומניחו באסקופה, you bring a key on the Shabbat, you even place it on a threshold. למחר, שבת, פותח ונועל, ומחזירו לאסקופה, he open and close, and put it in the key in a threshold. ובזמן שהמנעול למעלה מ10, when they lock, it's above 10 handbreadth, מביא מפתח מערב שבת, he bring a key on the before Shabbat begins, and ומניחו במנעול, למחר פותח ונועל, מחזירו למקומו דברי רבי מאיר. Okay? So he basically placed into a lock, and then the following day he open and close the door and return the key to its place on the top of the lock. That's Rabbi מאיר. והחכמים אומרים, אף בזמן שהמנעול למעלה מ10 טפחים, מביא מפתח מערב שבת ומניחו באסקופה. The sages say that even if the lock is above the 10 handbreadth of the ground, one may bring a key on Shabbat Eve and place it on a threshold, and the following day he may open and close the door, and then return the key to its place on the threshold, on the window, that the בחלון של גבי הפתח, or the window above the entrance. אם יש בחלון 4x4, the window is 4x4 handbreadth, אסור, it's prohibited, מפני שהוא כמוציא מרשות לרשות, so is transferring the key from one domain, in the Carmelite, to another private domain. מי דקאמר וכן בחנויות, from the fact that we said in the Braita that it's a store, it's what we understand indirectly. מכלל דאיסקופה קרמלית הסכם, the threshold is a Carmelite, so היי מנעול אחד, so what type of lock we are speaking here? אילית בית 4 מקום פטור, if they don't have a 4x4 handbreadth, so it's considering as exempt domain. So V ב4, if the key have 4x4, בהלמה רבנן, if you tell me that the sages hold in this type of case, that what? אף בזמן שהמנעול למעלה מ10, מביא מפתח מערב שבת ומניחו באסקופה. So he said that if even with the lock is above 10 handbreadth of the ground, he may bring a key on Shabbat Eve and place it in the threshold. למחר פותח ונועל בו ומניחו לאסקופה, and the following day he may open and close the door and return the key to the threshold, או לחלון שעל גבי הפתח, or to the window above the door. So they said, והר קם מטלטל מקרמלית לרשות היחיד, but he is basically carried from a Carmelite to a private domain. So now the Gemara responds, and you see here the picture number 358. אמר אביי לעולם the ein bo arba'a. You have to say that they do not have the 4 handbreadth. ויש בו לחוק ולהשלימו ל4. But they have the ability to do what? That there is you can curve out a hole that will complete its area that is requisite for handbreadth. ובהפליג רב מאיר סבר חוקים להשלים ורב ינן סבר אין חוקים להשלים. And this is the disputation. Rab Meir said that we can curve out a space to complete the 4 handbreadth, and the sages said that one does not carve out to space to complete it 4 handbreadth. So it means that this lock, it's the way that you have it here, it's not large enough to have the place his significance, and it's basically exempt place. It's makom ptur. Amar Rav Bibi bar Abaye shma mina mehamatnit atlat. You derive from this Mishnah 3 important things. Number 1, Shma mina chokekim lehashlim. We derive from that Mishnah that they said we can carve out completely when you need the necessary dimensions. Ushma mina hadar be Rab Meir misha'arei gina. You learn also that Rab Meir backed off his idea, his ruling that in regard to garden place, because Rab Meir hold that a person who's standing in a Carmelite from opening door to a private domain and is permitted to in a similar case. Ushma mina, you learn the third thing, midrabanan. So you learn here also from the rabbis that ruling ita l'Rav Dimi. The Rav Dimi accepted. He said the place that you don't have 4x4 handbreadth, which is מקום פטור, exempt place, מותר לבני רשות היחיד ולשני רשות הרבים לחטף עליו. Both people in the private and the public domain may adjust the burden onto their shoulders. ובלבד שלא יחליפו, as long as they not exchange objects with one another. So you see here that you cannot change toward the makom ptur because they're not allowed to carry a key that was in a threshold, that is a Carmelite, to use it for the exempt place and then to put it in a window that is a 4x4 handbreadth that is considering a private domain. First halacha is Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 3:13. Door, דלת שבמוקצה, a door that in a rare court or door built into woven thrones used to seal a breach. If they have a hinge, so one may use them to close an opening on Shabbat. If they never have a hinge, one may use them only if they are held above the ground. We also learn in regard to a widow door, delet almana, it is prohibited to close an opening with a door built from a single plank or one that does not have a lower door steel. The halacha is according to the stringencies in both explanation of the widow door. That's Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 3:13. We talk about a festival that is prohibited to arrange firewood or other items in the manner that they are typically arranged from the bottom up. Instead, one must arrange them in an unusual fashion, which means place the one log, then place another beneath it, and so on. That's Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 5:02. It is permitted to stand in a public domain and lock the door in a private domain, as the Rab Meir who rule, and that's Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 3:50.